Hello guys, and welcome back to my playthrough of Fire Emblem 3 Houses on Maddening difficulty in the Blue Lion route. We're starting today on Chapter 4. If you are not on Chapter 4, feel free to go back to my previous video. We covered from the prologue to Chapter 3, so if you're having difficulty with the level before Chapter 4, go back there. Otherwise, glad to have you with us. So right now, I'm at the beginning of the month that will end in the Chapter 4 fight. So right now, I'm just going to recommend that if you want to know in depth what I do for each month, go back to the first video and watch that. I'll cover it there. In this video, I'm going to run through the months pretty quickly and not go into depth. So basically, all I'm going to say is that first weekend, I go to the monastery, I use all my activity points, I complete the quests, I do everything I can there. And then going into the next weekends, I do a lot of auxiliary battles with the occasional seminar or rest. So we're just going to skip ahead here a little bit, and then we'll just end up right at the beginning, right before the Chapter 4 battle. There's actually one thing I want to show you first, and that is the certifications. I already showed you some of the certifications in the first video. In the second video here, I'm going to show you the rest of those first level certifications. So we're going to start off here with Felix, and I'm going to class him as a Myrmidon so I can focus on his speed. Next here, I'm also going to classify Ash as a Myrmidon so I can focus on his speed as well. Next, I'm going to classify Sylvain as a fighter. Then I'm going to classify Annette as a monk. And finally, I'm going to class Ingrid as a Myrmidon. Now that that's out of the way, we can focus on the battle of Chapter 4. You'll start with this cutscene in which you'll see Dimitri, Dedue, Byleth, and Ingrid, and they'll all be talking to each other, and then eventually Sedith and Flame will come along as well, and you'll discuss that you're going to go guard the entrance to the Holy Mausoleum, which is where you will see enemies walk in, and that's when the battle will start. Before the battle, of course, you're going to want to make sure that all your weapons are up at full health or close to it. You want to make sure that everybody's got a bow. You want to make sure that everybody's ready to go in this fight. Check out their combat arts, check out their abilities, and make sure everything's where you want it to be. If you want to know more in depth about that, again, go back to my last video, cover that in more depth there. And here, I'm just going to kind of go into it and assume that you've taken care of those things. If there's anything in particular that you need to do to make this easier, I'll cover that. But all the main things I cover in the previous video. So in this battle, the victory condition is to defeat the enemy commander, which is the mage all the way at the far end of the room. And you have to do it in 25 turns or less. The main difficulty in this map is going to be avoiding the center, where the Death Knight is hanging out. Definitely do not approach him. None of your units will be strong enough, unless you're cheating. I don't know how else you would do it. Honestly, I don't know. So avoid that Death Knight in the center, or he will murder you. Just go to the sides. Flare out, break into two groups, and go to each side of the room and clear it out that way. But first, you're going to want to draw that one archer right there at the beginning to you by making sure to stay outside of the radius of any of the other troops, especially the Death Knight. Kill him first, then move on. Next, I break my group into two groups, each consisting of 5 people. On the group on the left, I put Byleth, Felix, Ash, Annette, and Lysithea. And on the group to the right, I put Dimitri, Dedue, Ingrid, Sylvain, and Mercedes. Once the groups are split, have them advance up the sides, each taking the left and the right side. Have them advance up at about the same pace, or otherwise one side is going to have a majority of the enemies over the other. At this point, it's up to you on how you want to approach attacking these enemies. There's nothing in particular that you need to know here. They're just a group of enemies like you've fought in every battle. So it's just up to you to determine how you best want to do that using combat arts or gambits or, different weapons, anything like that. It's all up to you. Just defeat those enemies as you move up. After a certain number of turns, I'm not exactly sure how many, 3 more enemies will arrive behind you. As long as you haven't advanced yourself too far and got engaged in too many enemies, you shouldn't have a problem disengaging and attacking the enemies from behind with both groups before moving back forward. Once you have defeated all the enemies, making sure to avoid the Death Knight in the center, except for the commander, get everyone around the commander and then follow up with the attacks to finish him off. He is on an avoidance and heal tile, so that's going to make it a bit more difficult to kill him, but as long as everybody's there, you should be able to defeat him in one turn, so the heal tile shouldn't matter. And if you use the right attacks, the avoidance shouldn't matter either. Funny note here, I wasn't actually trying to kill him with Byleth, I was trying to weaken him up, but of course I got the critical. I mean, I'm not going to complain about winning the level, but at the same time I would have loved to have given that experience to someone else. Anyways, now that the commander is dead, you will then be led into a cutscene in which you'll be introduced to the Sword of the Creator, which is the sword that only Byleth can wield. It has special abilities, including the ability to attack from 2 squares away, which is pretty nice, and it also boasts a very high critical and also a special combat art. You'll learn all of this later, and you'll get to see all of it when you wield the weapon. Just know that it's a pretty awesome weapon that you receive from this cutscene. With the sword in hand, Byleth will end the commander, and then Catherine and a couple of church soldiers will come into the room, saying that they'll clean up whatever's left, which at this point shouldn't be anything because the Death Knight left. After the level, you'll then be led into a cutscene where you will have Rhea, Shamir, and Sedith on one side against 3 captured Western Church members, and Rhea will pass judgment on them, saying that they need to atone with their lives. You'll then be led into a cutscene with 2 question-marked individuals who are talking about the Sword of the Creator and the person who can wield it, and then you'll be led into a cutscene with Rhea and Sedith talking to Byleth, where they entrust Byleth with the Sword of the Creator. Well, more like Rhea does, and Sedith begrudgingly says okay. And then you'll head into the next month, where they'll give you a brief introduction into what your next mission is going to be, which in this case is going to be trying to recover a hero's relic that was stolen by some thieves in Fargus. Next, you'll be led into a cutscene in which you will meet Hanneman again. He will tell you that he now knows what your crest is. He didn't recognize it at first, but now he does. And it's a crest that's supposed to have died out a long time ago, and it was the only one that could wield the Sword of the Creator, but you have it in you now, so then, of course, raises the question, how'd that happen? Which will all be answered later, but not right now. Now that it's the first weekend of the month, I definitely recommend going out and visiting the monastery. Make sure to go around and use up all of your activity points. Go visit the advice box. Try and return all the lost items. Complete any quests. Talk to everybody. Just do all that kind of stuff. Just try and make sure that you try and build that support. And you want to also try and get all the bonuses from the quests and other things like that. There's a this month exclusive quest in which you try and find Geralt. This quest is given to you by Sedith, and it will lead you to talk to a bunch of people trying to find out what Geralt is, and eventually you'll learn that he's in the cemetery, which then will become a spot that's unlocked after you figure that out. Once there, Geralt will tell you that you are standing at the gravestone of Byleth's mother, and then he will give Byleth a ring, and tell Byleth to, at the right time, give it to the person that he loves. After the monastery phase, you'll then be led into another instruction phase. Just make sure to teach the students what you want them to learn. At the end of this week, I choose to do a seminar. You can choose to do a battle. It's up to you. Just make sure that you don't do another monastery phase. You don't really need to do that. For the next weekend, I choose to do a battle. It's time to get that experience up, and also time to complete some of those quests that were given to you that include needing to battle, like some of the ones that are given to you by the merchants. I'm not going to show how to do this because this one's really easy. It may be the same on everybody's. I'm not sure. I haven't looked. It probably is. But I'm not going to show it because it's really easy, and if you completed the other levels, you'll complete this one no problem. With the level complete, the weekend ends, and this is the last weekend before the battle for the month, so I'm going to take this time to complete the certifications for everybody so they can be up into the class I want them to be in. If you have anybody else who you haven't classified into a class already at this point, from levels at the level 5 class, go ahead and do so. If you need more of the seals, you can buy them at the item shop. With all your preparations there done and out of the way, let's get going on this battle. For this battle, you will also be joined by Gilbert as an allied troop who you have no control over, which, trust me, that gets to be annoying, but more on that later. As is usual at this point, make sure that all of your units have the weapons you want them to have, and you have repaired or replaced any of the weapons that they have that are low on durability. You don't want a weapon breaking in the middle of a battle, let me tell you that. With all preparations complete, give it a quick save and let's get this thing going. The victory conditions for this one are very simple, just defeat the enemy commander, and the defeat conditions are just let Byleth or Dimitri fall. Luckily, Gilbert does not fall under this category of defeat. Thank goodness, he is a suicidal maniac. Now I would start by taking care of those first 2 enemies right there. They may seem straightforward, but trust me, there's more going into this level than it looks like. You want to rush everybody towards those 2 troops because you will be attacked from behind by 2 groups of enemies. So you're going to want to make sure that you're prepared for that and don't get blindsided like I was the very first time that I ever played this. The other very important thing to keep in mind with this level is the archers on the upper level surrounding Micklin, the bad guy. They are a pain in the backside, and if one of them decides to come and shoot you, the entire rest of the army comes around to attack you. So stay out of their range, at least for now. Start this level by attacking the two enemies directly in front of you. Once you attack and defeat those enemies, a new group of enemies will appear behind you, and you have to be prepared for that. But focus on taking out that group of enemies first and pushing all of your units towards them so they're out of the range of the group of enemies that will appear behind. After you've defeated those two enemies, put yourself back into a line at about where I've got it. That should be a pretty safe zone. And just to be safe, the people in the middle, make sure that they can withstand being attacked by a thief, so make sure they have high attack speed. If you've positioned your troops correctly, Gilbert should be the one taking the brunt of this attack. After he's finished with his turn and they have their turns, he'll be down to very little health. When it comes to your turn, just take down all of the remaining enemies on the stairs. No more will appear at this moment, but there will be more later. I wasn't able to kill all of the enemies on the last turn. Instead, I ended up leaving a mage who ended up defeating Gilbert. But he only retreats. He's not permanently dead, and also that's not part of the victory conditions. So it actually is a success because now Gilbert can't run ahead like he normally does and trigger all of the archers and then all of the units to come after me. I can do it on my own terms. Once you've defeated all of the enemies, go ahead and heal yourself up, and then move back out the squares to where you were when you first fought that group of 4 enemies, because the second group of 4 enemies will be coming very soon, in about 2, maybe 3 turns. So go ahead and quickly move yourself back out of range, wait for them to come, and then defeat them all again. Again, once you've defeated them, heal up, and then you can go ahead and move on north. Once you've gone north enough that you are just outside the range of the mage up north, go ahead and move somebody south to draw the attention of that thief, because you may as well get the experience, why not? And then at the same time, move somebody just into range of the mage. You can fight both of them on the same turn without any difficulty. After you defeat those enemies, it's time to prepare for another surprise attack. This one will come from the area directly in front of you at the top of your screen up in the upper right corner. There are 2 little notches in the wall there, and those are doors where enemies will appear from behind once you go past the doors. So before you get past the doors, go to the bottom door, go out from the block in front of the door, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then put your units that will be killed by thieves on the outside range there. So that's going to be all of your mages. And then take any of your troops that have enough health or enough speed to survive and move them forward so that way they will be attacked. There will be 2 waves to this attack, and then each one will have 2 thieves. They'll each come from the door. So it'll be 2 thieves, they'll attack, then the next turn, 2 more thieves, and they'll attack. And they get their turn before you get theirs. So that's why it's very important to have your units properly placed so that way they do not die before you get your chance to fight back. after you defeat the last of the surprise enemies, the rest of this level is fairly straightforward. Just go around, and making sure not to attract the attention of the archers, defeat the rest of the enemies as you go around in a circle. You don't have to defeat the Fortress Knight hiding in the upper left corner, but I would because he's holding an accuracy ring and that could come in handy later. So just go ahead and move through, clearing everybody out until you get to Mictlan. Once you've defeated everyone but Mictlan, get your mages lined up to attack him. Make sure to stay outside of his range of attack, and then just move in and kill him. He's actually really simple to kill, because he has no ranged attack. And he's susceptible to magic, which is a 2-square attack range anyway. So just make sure your mages are ready, bring them in, and hammer him. After you defeat Mictlan, you'd think the level would be over, and you'd be wrong. Instead, you get a cutscene in which you see that the hero's relic corrupts Mictlan and turns him into a demonic beast, which kills everything including his own men. You'll then be led into a secondary part of this fight, in which the victory condition is now just defeat Mictlan, who is the only one left on this map if you defeated everyone else. This will lead you into fighting monsters for the first time, which will become frequent in lots of levels. Monsters are not terribly difficult to fight, but they can be a problem if you're fighting them with a lot of other units around. In this particular instance, Mictlan is the only one on the map, or I guess he's a demonic beast at this point, so this isn't too difficult. Just make sure that anybody with low health or low speed and low health is out of the way, because generally these demonic beasts are kind of slow, but they deliver a punch. So you won't be doubled, but you can, unless you're really slow, but you can be killed by a single hit if you put someone like a mage up in front of it. So generally the way to defeat monsters is to go and you have to break through the barrier in order to do lots of damage. So each barrier on the monster is going to take 2 hits to break from normal attacks, or if you use a gambit, it will immediately break the square that you target first with the gambit. Any attack that goes through multiple squares will shatter the barrier and leave it vulnerable to the next attack that will break it. And every time you do break a barrier, the monster is then stunned for a little bit and it can't attack for the next attack. If you manage to destroy all 4 barriers around the monster, it will go into 1 full turn of stun, and it cannot counter any attack during that turn. That would be your opportunity to make the most of and destroy the monster. There are also health bars on the monster that go beyond what you can see. So there's 1 health bar that you can see, and then you'll see little diamonds next to the health bar on the right side. Those indicate how many bars of life he has. Until all of those are broken, you will not be able to defeat the monster. But every time you do break one of those, he won't be able to counter, so use that to your advantage. If you didn't catch all of what I said or you didn't understand it, don't worry, Sothis will explain this to you before you actually start the fight. Once you're into the fight, just go ahead and employ all the strategies I talked about and that Sothis will talk about, and just defeat him. It shouldn't be too difficult. Again, make sure you keep your slow units out of the way, and it shouldn't be a problem. After you complete the level, you'll then be set into a cutscene with Rhea, where she will tell you that anybody who does not possess a crest and holds a hero's relic will suffer the same fate that Micklin did. You will then be led into a cutscene with Dimitri, in which he will tell you about how the crests are a symbol of power within Fodlan, and they result in oftentimes the child who should be the heir to the throne not being the heir simply because they do not possess a crest. After that, you'll be led into one more cutscene in which Seteth will tell you that Flynn is missing, and that your task is now to try and figure out where Kishi could have gone. This will lead you to the weekend, in which I choose to go ahead and try to complete some more certifications and level up my units to intermediate classes. For Byleth, I chose to do Mercenary, and I'm going to eventually do Mercenary for Dimitri as well. He just doesn't have enough sword, I think, at this point. I do Brawler for Dedu, I do Brawler for Sylvain, and then I do Mercenary for Felix, and Thief for Ash, as well as Pegasus Knight for Ingrid. Because searching the monastery for Flane is part of your main mission for this month, they're going to require that you go explore the monastery on your first weekend as opposed to do anything else. So obviously the main part of this explore phase is going to be finding out where Flane went. This is actually pretty easy. You just go around talking to all the people with the red scrolls over their heads, and it will eventually lead you to where you need to go. Don't go into Yuritsa's room until you're ready to end the month, because it will do that right then. And since this is the first week, we don't really want to do that just yet, you know? So, make sure you don't enter the room if it asks you. And then just go around and do everything else you would normally do on a monastery day. You know, use up all your activity points, talk with everybody, do fishing, you know, all those other things, and just continue to build rapport with your students and level up that professor level. On the next week, I choose to do a battle. In this case, I chose to do a quest battle, but in general, pretty much all of the quest battles, not the paralog battles, those are different, but the quest battles are all very easy, and this one is no exception. So I'm not going to bother showing it because it's at about the same caliber as an auxiliary battle. So you should clear it with no problem. You could probably clear it with a single troop. That may be a slight exaggeration, but it's pretty close. On the next weekend, I chose to do a seminar led by Catherine, so I could increase my sword and brawling. This then leads us to the final weekend, in which I choose to do another battle, this time an auxiliary battle. Now that all the weekends have been completed, it's time to embark upon your mission. To start this mission out, you'll see in the cutscenes that Manuela is not dead, but unconscious on the floor, and then you will have to send your house leader along with a guard to take her to the infirmary. In the meantime, the rest of you will go down into the hidden staircase entrance that is back there. Manuela was found holding Yuritsa's mask, so you know that Yuritsa is the Death Knight, and then you go down and you find that both Flane and a girl named Monica are knocked out unconscious on the floor. Then you'll be led into the fight in which the Death Knight is at the center and he has enemies all the way around. As before, make sure all of your units' weapons are ready for battle. If they have enough durability, then they're fine. If they don't, then sell them and buy new ones. Also, you may or may not have enough abilities to check that out. Probably not at this point, but you can go into your units, go over to where you select a battalion, and then you can do abilities. And in there, you can change out which abilities they have, depending on what you feel like you want them to have. Do remember, though, that you will not have Dimitri during this fight, which is unfortunate. But, you can do the best with what you've got there. And especially make sure you request mission assistance from somebody. As I said, I already did that with Lysithea. I'm going to be doing that in every battle. Make sure you do that with somebody. It doesn't have to be the same person every battle, but somebody. Once you have all of that prepared, make sure your units are all where you want them to be, and then let's get this thing started. So, 2 very important things to keep in mind during the course of this battle. The first is that there are warp points all over the floor. I will try and tell you as best I can which ones go where as I approach them, but I may be wrong. I don't use all of them, usually. The second thing is that there are 2 victory conditions to this. You can choose either one, but I'm going to tell you right now, killing the Death Knight is basically not an option unless you use the Sword of the Creator and get a lucky critical. Otherwise, the other option is going to be kill every single other unit on the map besides the Death Knight. So this is where you're going to need the warp points on the floor, because you're going to need to go send some troops to go forward to the left, and then send some troops to go backwards to the right there, using the warp points to get to the various points to reach all of the enemies that are in all of the different areas. Sounds like a pain, and it is, especially since it's a timed mission with only 25 turns to complete it. You really will be pushing that time limit at the end, I promise, but you should be able to make it 95% of the time. I did have to restart this one, made a couple of mistakes, so this is the second time through. This is what you'll be seeing here, but, it wasn't too bad. Only took 2 tries. This is one of those levels, though, that I absolutely hate. This is one of the few ones that I have to redo, along with usually the mission that we just did, and then also one a couple later, which I'll let you know when we get there. So first things first, just take care of all the enemies in this room. Use all of your troops to do so. It'll make it a lot easier. And then after that point, that's when you'll want to split up and send some units behind and some units forward. To defeat the enemies in this room, I'd recommend putting somebody with a high avoidance and also high speed to be the kind of conduit for the attacks. Make sure that you're not in range of all 3 of the archers on the first turn. That would be a mistake, and trust me, that's definitely a mistake. Very hard. As long as you do that, they'll come and attack you. Use your attacks to thin out as much of them as you possibly can, and then on the next turn, finish off what's left. Now it's time to split your group into 2. What I would do is send only a mage and 1 other troop, probably one of your stronger units, over to the right side. You only need 2 of them. Then take the other 8 or 7, whatever the number is, take the rest of those guys and push north. On the right side, after you warp through, just clear out that armored knight. Then you will have 2 archers that you have to get past, which if you plan this correctly, you should be able to make it through with only getting shot 1 time. Then on the other side, on the left side, you're going to need to push forward into that room where they have probably one of the most diverse group of enemies I've seen in the entire game. They have an armored knight, they have a soldier, they have an archer, they have some mages, they have everything. So there's not one good unit to send in there. So make sure to go move just to the edge of the range, lure what's going to be the mages and those armored knights to attack you, and then just try and clear them out as you can, preferably leaving just the soldier or one of the armored knights left, so that way you'll survive the next turn. Now going back to the other 2 units over there. Make sure to move right to the edge of the range of the archer first. Then take 1 turn to move into the range of the archer, accept the attack. Then you'll move out of it towards the warp zone. If done properly, you should be able to make it through taking only 1 hit, then go and defeat him up close and personal. And then you can heal using one of your mages, which hopefully you brought a healer over on this side. I guess that should be one of the things I should have mentioned earlier. Probably you should bring a healer over to this side. Somebody with physic. One thing to keep in mind is that there are 3 hidden enemies on this map, all in the same room. They're in that one suspiciously empty area just above the 2 archers that you'll be battling on the far right side. There are 2 cavaliers, which are horseback enemies, and then an archer in there. So tread carefully. That's why I'm sending both Felix and Byleth towards that warp point on the bottom right corner of that room on the left side. That will warp them into that area. The other thing I'm doing is I'm sending someone up to open the door and let that fortress knight in at the same time. Because if you don't start doing multiple things at the same time here, you're going to run out of turns. I've had it happen. Really annoying when you need that one last turn, but it's already turn 25, and what can you do about it, you know? After that armored knight is taken care of, you're going to have a little bit of a fun time here between the mages on the left and that archer on the right. Because if you're anywhere in that hallway, they can both attack you since they are both ranged attacks, and that archer, of course, can reach 3 squares away. So definitely be careful in approaching this. Your approach may be different than mine. I chose to use Ash, who I knew could withstand the mage, to open the door, since I know the mage in the far left is not going to move at all. He's not going to. It's the one in front of him that will move. So he'll only have to withstand 1 attack from that, and then I put Ingrid over on the right side there to distract the archer and make him attack her. I made sure to put her at a point where he was going to have to take the full range attack and most likely miss. Had to go for a little bit of luck there, but, you know, it was on my side. The odds were pretty low that he would hit. But so that was able to lure them to different directions, so that way then I could attack both of them separately. Because when you open the one door on the left side, the door on the right side will open as well. After luring those 2 enemies to the opposite sides there, I then sent in Dedu to kill one of the mages, and then I used Annette and her drawback ability to draw him back out of the range of the mage that isn't going to move. I then made sure to move Ingrid dismount off of the Pegasus so she wouldn't be at the disadvantage against the archer, and then prepared myself for the next turn. On the right side, I had Sylvain and Mercedes move around and continue to open those doors and defeat the archers. At this point, there's only 1 left. With that archer defeated, I now decided it was time to enter into that hidden room on the right side. So I sent Felix through, and then Byleth, and in there you'll find 2 cavaliers and an archer. I decided the archer was the bigger threat here because of his venom strike, so I took him out and then prepared myself for the next turn. With that room cleared and that lever flipped, now all of the portals in that room will be activated, and you're going to need to use all of them to kill all the enemies in this area. So the portal that is in the upper left corner, on the upper row and in the left side, that one will warp you to where that mage is who's been healing the enemy troops. And the one just to the right of it, so upper center, that one will take you in towards the armored knight. So send the mage up in there. So in my case, it's Mercedes. On the left side, move your units through the gate and get them right next to the edge of the attack radius and move them just into it enough that they start to bring the troops that way. Then once that happened, then you can use the upper left left upper portal to warp both Byleth and Sylvain into the fight from that side. So use all of everybody's abilities and clear out that armored knight and everybody that moves towards you in that room. After all 4 of those enemies that are mobile and there have been defeated, there are only 6 enemies left in the map. There's the armored knight in the upper right, and then there are the 2 mages down below guarding the door, and then 2 mages behind the door as well as a cavalier who you all need to defeat to end the level. So start by defeating the 2 mages outside the door, and then also defeating the armored knight in the upper right corner. After defeating those 3 troops and making sure that your troops are sufficiently healed, go ahead and stand all along in a line just outside the door, and wait for those units to come and attack you. After luring everybody in range, go ahead and open the door, and then you have to make sure to kill all the enemies that are in that room on the same turn. So make sure that everybody is as close as they can be to the door, then open the door and rush in and kill everybody, and the level will end. With the last enemy defeated except for the Death Knight, the Flame Emperor will come in and tell the Death Knight to leave, which they both do, and then the level will end. Upon completion of the level, you'll then be led into a cutscene in which Dimitri comes back and you kind of fill him in on the fact that you found him flaying underground. And then you will then be led into a cutscene with Sedith, in which he will express his gratitude for you saving Flayn, and then you will then be told, or asked more or less, to let Flayn into your house, which you do. You'll be then led into a cutscene with Rhea and Sedith, and then they will kind of fill you in on next month's mission, which is actually a bigger version of the mock battle between the 3 houses that happened at the very beginning of the game, this time at Gronder Field, and this one's actually called the Battle of the Eagle and Lion. And lastly, you'll be led into a cutscene with Gerald, in which he will say that he has a mission far from Gronder Field, so he won't be able to spectate this particular battle, and that also, if something were to happen to him at any point, he's left something in the room for you to go find later. Alright, that'll wrap up this video, the end of the second in this series of walking through Maddening difficulty in the Blue Lion house on Fire Emblem 3 Houses. I will have another one out soon. There was kind of a delay getting this one out because I had massive storage issues on my computer. Turns out when you take a bunch of videos, it fills up a bunch of storage really fast. Who knew, right? Anyway, so going forward, I've got that figured out, so these should be coming out a lot quicker. Anyways, I appreciate you guys watching this. Stay tuned for more later. Thank you.